IWM Duxford, commemorating VE Day, Flying Day, with which we open our 2022 air display season here at this outstanding venue. Without question, one of the jewels in the crown of the air display world, and of course, a site with so much wartime history to its name as well. Whether as part of Royal Air Force Fighter Command, as a number 12 group sector station during the Battle of Britain period, or later as home to the 78th Fighter Group of the US Army Air Forces from 1943 through until after the end of World War II in 1945. And so Duxford made a very substantial contribution indeed to the Allied victory in the European theatre on the 8th of May 1945, which we commemorate with today's display. Looks like we're going to get a Cirrus light aircraft out of the way before the first two aeroplanes on our programme this afternoon get airborne. They'll be going out to the hold initially before running in to start the programme at 2 o'clock.
Excuse the pop. Forgetting to plug myself in. Hello, welcome. Light aircraft going off, I'll just let that go. And I do have Adam filming actually, I should be making use of him. What a splendid job. Hello, welcome. Hopefully not getting too much of juggling too much as ever. Hello everyone, welcome back to Airshow season. I'll let Ben do a bit of introduction to the aircraft taking off now.
One of them, the US Army Air Force. The other, albeit the example we see here in the colours of our own Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy, a machine best known for its exploits in the Pacific Theatre with the US Navy and Marine Corps, although it was used to some extent in Europe as well, making it very appropriate to include in our show this afternoon. Rolling first off the hard is the Goodyear FG-1D Corsair, and going off the grass, the North American TF-51D Mustang.
Well, hi everyone.
Now,
I hope your audio sounds a bit better than mine.
Open our 2022 season. There is, of course, a very full program.
Welcome everyone. Hopefully you can hear me over the sheer panic it is to watch a one-man band live stream from an air show. What's Game Remix today? I've got a couple of videos I will play for you before we get into the flying proper. But we are looking forward to a really good set of flying. Corsair Mustang just taken off, Youngman Cossack Wind, Yak 52, Staggerwing, beautiful, Catalina, Hurricane, Nimrod, Spitfire and Buchon to finish. So an action-packed day. Display starting at about 2 o'clock. Ben will do a far better introduction to the day than me, so I will let him talk to you for a little while.
The opening of IWM Duxford's American Air Museum, as well as the 75th anniversary this year of the establishment of the United States Air Force. Young Aviators is the theme of our flying day on the 1st of August. And then on Saturday the 27th of August, we've got the repeat of a new event that was staged to great acclaim last year. It was a really fantastic occasion, the Duxford Flying Evening, with flying lasting through from late afternoon, early evening until official sundown, with pyrotechnic displays very much in evidence towards the end. Look out for further details of that. And then another very special event, our Duxford Flying Finale on Saturday the 8th of October, bringing the season to a close in real style with a programme made up of Duxford-based aeroplanes and some choice visitors. And that is followed by another model aircraft flying day, the Model Aircraft Centenary Flying Day on Sunday the 9th of October. Alongside them, we of course have our two main air shows, Saturday 18th and Sunday 19th of June. The Father's Day weekend, of course, is the date for our Duxford Summer Air Show, a really entertaining and broad mix of aeroplanes from First World War replicas to current service aircraft, including some very rare overseas representation courtesy of the Fokker 4 team, Fokker S11 instructors over from the Netherlands. And then Saturday the 10th and Sunday the 11th of September, the Battle of Britain Air Show. Heritage filling the skies here, the massed formations of Spitfires and Hurricanes dominating proceedings in what will be one of the top historic aircraft events in the UK in 2022. All of these available to book in terms of ticketing via the IWM website, iwm.org.uk, and that's where you can also find out details of IWM Live, which Siobhan was telling you about. That's on Saturday the 11th of June. A new event for the history fans amongst you, with talks from some renowned historians and activities going on throughout the site here. A new event for this season, and we very much look forward to seeing you there. And a particular welcome to all of you here who are IWM members. Great to have you with us. If you'd like to join the IWM membership scheme and take advantage of all the benefits that offers, including early release of information on flying participation at the flying days and air shows, the membership tent can be found just to the rear of the control tower. Incidentally, if you haven't been to our historic Duxford exhibition in the old station watch office just behind the control tower, that's the place to find out about the history of this aerodrome, construction of which started in 1917. It was opened initially as part of the then Royal Flying Corps, which became the Royal Air Force on the 1st of April 1918. The following year, and remained an RAF and US Army Air Forces station all the way through until 1961, when Duxford was closed to powered flying. It was then in 1973 that the first public access to the site under Imperial War Museum auspices became possible. And of course, ever since then, Duxford has rekindled memories of its Second World War days through the sort of Warbird displays that are going to form such a major part of this afternoon's flying programme. Many of which, of course, involve aircraft types that flew from this airfield during wartime. And so it's exceptionally appropriate to see the Mustang as part of our opening display, because P-51s of the 78th Fighter Group were stationed here in 1944 and 45, having replaced the Republic P-47D Thunderbolt with that unit, whose aircraft were famed for their black and white checkered engine cowlings. And alongside the Mustang in this opening item, one of the greatest naval fighters of all time, a vital asset to the US Navy, US Marine Corps, Royal New Zealand Air Force, and the Fleet Air Arm of our Royal Navy during the long days of the Pacific campaigns through the latter stages of World War II, but also an aircraft used in particular by the Royal Navy in the European theatre to some extent as well, again in the latter part of the war. We'll be seeing them running through once in formation, then splitting off to give us two solo displays as we get ready to open the 2022 season at Duxford. Hope you're all having a wonderful day with us already, and it's about to get even better. Now, the FG-1D Corsair and the TF-51D Mustang. Goes the Corsair into the vertical. And a good opportunity to see that so distinctive inverted gull wing configuration that gave rise to this aircraft's nickname of the bent wing bird.
The Corsair was introduced in 1940. It boasted the most powerful engine along with the largest diameter propeller of any fighter up to then in history. The result of this engine and propeller combination was the first fighter to exceed 400 miles an hour. Corsairs were built right up until 1952, giving the type the honour of having the longest production run of any American piston engine fighter.
Now the reason for that inverted gull wing configuration was because, of course, for carrier operations, the aircraft had to be fitted with folding wings to maximise the amount of space available for aeroplanes in the small confines of an aircraft carrier deck. But they also wanted to give that huge propeller sufficient ground clearance, and this design was the result.
As Ben has already mentioned, Corsairs operated initially with they operated with the British Fleet Air Arm, but the first service engagement for them was with the US Marine Corps, operating from makeshift land bases across the Pacific.
And that was quite an interesting aspect of the Corsair, designed, as I say, as a carrier fighter. But it wasn't possible initially to qualify the aircraft to undertake carrier operations from American decks. This was because of certain difficult handling characteristics the aircraft exhibited. And so our Royal Navy carried out carrier qualifications before the US Navy of the Corsair. The result was that, as Siobhan mentioned, it was US Marine Corps Corsairs that in December 1942 started operating from land bases. In fact, over the type's history in World War II, the majority of Corsair missions were indeed flown from land bases rather than carriers.
Corsair was built under license by the Goodyear Aircraft Corporation in Ohio and was accepted by the US Navy in April 1945 and dispatched to Guam in the Pacific. The next piece of her known history has her at a repair depot in the Philippines, and following this she was returned stateside. She spent a number of years allocated to various US Naval Air Reserve squadrons, as well as varying periods of storage, until she was eventually put up for disposal in March 1956. Owned and operated by the Fighter Collection here at Duxford, it's a very original example of the type that's never been actually restored.
And its colours are those of a Corsair 4 of 1850 Squadron of the Royal Navy's Fleet Air Arm during 1945. At the peak of this aircraft's use by the Royal Navy, the type equipped 18 squadrons in both the European and the Pacific theatres. Their most important exploit in Europe were attacks on the German battleship Tirpitz during 1944. That, of course, before the final coup de grace was delivered against that infamous vessel. Royal Navy Corsairs also flew from two carriers, HMS Victorious and HMS Formidable, to strike targets near Tokyo as World War II neared its end. Goodyear built Corsairs in significant numbers. It was initially a chance-bought design, and there were many iterations of the basic model. The FG-1D, built by Goodyear, being one exemplar of that. They were also produced in small numbers by Brewster. Here comes the two-seat Mustang. Proposed the design and production of a more modern fighter, the Mustang, and the prototype flew on the 26th of October 1940 for the first time. B1710 engine. And while the Allison engine Mustangs were excellent low-level combat aircraft in particular, not least because of the outstandingly slippery airframe that North American had created, their performance at higher altitudes left a little to be desired, and that was where this aircraft's connection with Duxford Airfield first entered the story. Stationed here in wartime was an RAF outfit called the Air Fighting Development Unit, the AFDU, which undertook service trials of many different aircraft types. At one stage, one of its commanding officers, Ian Campbell-Ord, got talking to a good friend of his, the Rolls-Royce test pilot, Ronnie Harker. As a result of that, the seed of an idea was sown to equip the Mustang airframe with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine.
Mustangs served in nearly every combat zone during World War II and proved to be what many consider to be one of the most successful fighters in history. During World War II, Mustang pilots claimed to have destroyed nearly 5,000 enemy aircraft.
And a fair proportion of those fell to the guns of Mustangs stationed in this part of the world, not just at Duxford, but at the many other airfields occupied by the US 8th Army Air Force during the latter few years of World War II. Duxford, as I said earlier, becoming Station 357, home of the 78th Fighter Group, which is commemorated by the markings on this two-seater. outright performance of the Merlin Mustang that made it so effective, but its tremendous range as well. These were fighters that could escort Allied heavy bombers, the likes of the RAF Lancasters and Halifaxes, and the US Army Air Force's B-17s and B-24s, all the way to their targets in occupied Europe and back. Merlin-powered Mustangs. The engine is a Packard-built Merlin as opposed to a Rolls-Royce one. That Rolls-Royce was flat out producing Merlins of its own for the likes of Spitfires, Lancasters and Mosquitoes. So a production line was set up by the American automobile manufacturer Packard. They also produced Merlins that went into certain marks of Spitfire as well. As we're commemorating VE Day today, it's worth mentioning that the final mission flown by the 78 Fighter Group's Mustangs prior to VE Day in May 1945 was an escort to RAF Lancasters of the famed number 617 Squadron, the Dam Busters, engaged in a raid on Hitler's mountain retreat at Berchtesgaden. So the two American fighters into land, the fighter collection Corsair leading them in. Now the only example of the type flying in the UK, followed in by the TF-51D, owned by Anglia Aircraft Restorations, operated as part of the air leasing stable, and it divides its time between air leasing space at Sywell near Wellingborough and, appropriately enough, here at Duxford. And it was father and son flying those two aircraft for us. Brian Smith, the father, in the Corsair in the lead, and Nick Smith, his son, an F-35 Lightning II pilot no less, following up in the Mustang. Incidentally, the British Air Display Association was recently delighted to present Brian Smith with a Lifetime Achievement Award. This in honour of the fact that he started display flying 51 years ago, in 1971, with the turbulent team of the Tiger Club, and he is probably the longest serving purely civilian display pilot in British airshow history. But now, here's a combination we don't often see, in from the motorway end, inverted the Casa 131E Jungmann biplane trainer, and rolling around its spoke, the remarkable Levere Cosmic Wind. right is this Spanish-built Buchon. Showing us why the Jungmann really was one of the great training aircraft of World War II.
Indeed, Ben. It's estimated that about 4,000 Jungmann were built, first in Germany, and then under license in Switzerland, Spain, Czechoslovakia, Hungary and Japan. And as you said, they were used as aerobatic trainers by the Spanish Air Force up until the late 70s, and they were in continuous production in Spain for longer than in any other country. And this particular Jungmann displaying for us today is an ex-Spanish Air Force built in 1952.
So taking centre stage now is an aeroplane that can't help but make me smile every time I see it. You might think from the sort of manoeuvrability it was exhibiting there that this was a specialised aerobatic aeroplane, but it's actually an air racer. It's the Livia Cosmic Wind, and Livia is the name of its creator, the great Lockheed test pilot, Tony Livia. I first flew as far back as July 1947, and when you watch this, just think this aircraft has just 100 horsepower from its Continental 0200A engine. Its top speed is 95 miles an hour. And still it has this absolutely phenomenal aerobatic as well as outright performance for its engine size. This was because a new category known as Formula One air racing sprang up in the States not long after World War II. Very simple rules for what was known as the Goodyear class. And the first Cosmic Wind that appeared had just 85 horsepower from its Continental engine.
Were they successful in the air races then?
In those early days, reasonably so. There were 3 Cosmic Winds built initially. One of them, this one, named Ballerina, for a Lockheed flight test engineer named Glenn Fulkerson. And he gave it that name because his wife was, in fact, a ballerina. Outright successes in those early days were, as it turned out, quite hard to come by. But later, the various Cosmic Winds that came to Britain, including this one, were very successful in both handicap and mass start Formula One air racing, which became particularly popular in the 1970s.
When it came to the UK, this aircraft was bought by Norman Jones of the Tiger Club, which was at the time, I think, was quite modern compared to the rest of their fleet.
Yes, just a bit. It created a real stir when it first came over because people were used to seeing things like Miles Geminis and Magisters and, not to be critical, but Osters and the like on the air racing circuit at the time. So the appearance of a bespoke racer such as this really was something to behold. I suppose its most famous exploit, though not in air racing in the UK, but when the late, great Neil Williams flew it in the 1964 World Aerobatic Championships in Bilbao. And this was despite the fact that, even though, as we see here, it's amazingly aerobatically capable, it's not great for the sort of discipline of competition aerobatics. It needed quite a lot of sky to fly the manoeuvres because it's so fast. With a low-powered engine, it took time to build energy back up between manoeuvres, and also it had an almost useless inverted fuel system. So Neil Williams had to continually turn the fuel system on and off during his aerobatic sequence, which made his high overall placing all the more incredible a feat.
And I believe this aircraft, Ballerina, won the King's Cup race in 1964.
It did indeed, in the hands of Dennis Hartas, who took that year's British Air Racing Championship. And it carried on competing in Formula One air racing right through into the 1980s, though by then it had become rather outclassed by the likes of the more streamlined cassette racers and so on. Pete Kinsey, its current owner, has had it since 1984. He's a former British aerobatic champion, and he says it's a surprisingly practical tourer. He's had, when he used to have a limit on the amount of bottles of wine you could bring back duty-free from France, he said he was able to carry that amount of wine in the cosmic wind with him.
A very practical use indeed.
But now, here's the Jungmann, a contemporary of the de Havilland Tiger Moth, the three of which are plastic wings we can see on the flight line, but much more aerobatically capable. The first design of Bucher Flugzeugbau, which set up extensive production facilities at Johannisthal near Berlin. And no wonder, because this aircraft was produced in very large numbers for the Luftwaffe, becoming its, or one of its standard primary trainers.
Ben mentioned that sometimes the Jungmann, people can confuse it, especially to distance, with the Tiger Moth. In fact, I think originally the Jungmann had engines of 80 horsepower and later on 105 horsepower. But despite this kind of low power, it performed well due to its extreme lightness. So this example, for instance, would weigh about 1,000 pounds, which is about 300 pounds less than a Tiger Moth.
Just look at this from the Jungmann. This shows the sweetness of its controls. A beautiful rolling circle. Something that requires huge amounts of finesse to fly so accurately and so well. Was developed into an even more aerobatically capable single-seat advanced and aerobatic training version, the Bu 133 Meister. It was the Meister that was among the types that were flown in the aerobatic demonstration contest that formed part of the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, and if war hadn't intervened, could possibly have been the precursor to aerobatics becoming a full Olympic sport. The Jungmann is in fact in the colours of the German aerobatic team of the time. Perhaps surprisingly, given how capable the Bucher biplanes were, it was actually the rather larger and heavier Focke-Wulf Stieglitz that triumphed in that aerobatic contest in Berlin, in the hands of a Herr Horning. particular Spanish-built Casa Jungmann has a more powerful engine than the Bucher-built original, as Siobhan was saying. It's still not a lot of power, 150 horsepower. And so what you're seeing here is the most splendid demonstration of energy management. In a little low-powered aeroplane such as this, flying an aerobatic sequence along these lines is all about maintaining your energy, building it back up when required. Saw an absolutely glorious exhibition of that just now from the Jungmann. Pass coming up now. Right down the line in front of us. Partially on the knife edge. What a wonderful display. Our next display aircraft off the grass, that's the Yakovlev Yak-52, that'll be back with us shortly. We're going to bring the Jungmann and the Cosmic Wind into land. Anna Walker with the Jungmann, and there's the Cosmic Wind being brought in on the hard runway. Easing it down. I could watch those two flying those two aircraft all day. That was absolutely tremendous. The Jungmann and the Cosmic Wind. But now, once we've got the cosmic wind clear of the grass threshold at the other end, and a very, very well-deserved round of applause there from Anna Walker. Thank you all for your appreciation. She and Pete will be parking their diminutive aeroplanes up next to the crowd barrier, but about to roll one of the highlights of today's show. There's the Catalina going off the hard, and it'll be followed from the grass by an aircraft that we haven't seen in a flying display for more than 40 years in terms of this particular example of the Beech D-17S, the Staggerwing. They're going off to form up in the hold while we enjoy another aerobatic interlude.
This is a staff announcement with Mick Poynton, please return to the tower. That's Mick Poynton, please return to the tower. Thank you. The Yak-52 is a Soviet primary trainer aircraft, which first flew in 1976. It was designed as an aerobatic trainer for students in the Soviet Volunteer Society for Cooperation and Army Aviation and Navy. A long word to say, long few words, which was a training organisation that trained civilian sport pilots and military pilots who were going on to fly the more complex fast jets of that era. Don't be concerned if it looks like the gear aren't fully retracted. That's the normal position for the tricycle landing gear of this aircraft. And it is said that it affords a useful level of drag in down manoeuvres and a measure of protection should the aircraft be forced to land wheels up. The Yak-52 is a descendant of the single-seat competition aerobatic Yak-50. The Yak-52 is all metal and is powered by a 360 horsepower Fidiniov M14P 9-cylinder radial engine. The fuel and oil systems permit inverted flight for as long as 2 minutes.
The breakup of the Eastern Bloc, Yak-52s like this became immensely popular as private owner and aerobatic aircraft in the West. They were imported in huge numbers, a lot of them, like this one, built in Romania. And it's very easy to see why. This was a rugged airframe, very dependable big radial Zdeniev engine.
As you said, rugged. Like most Soviet military aircraft, they were designed to operate in rugged conditions. You know, for instance, Siberia, with minimal maintenance. Somebody was telling me this morning that, I don't know if this is right, but it sounds right, that because of the extreme cold in places like Siberia, they would dilute the oil with a little bit of petrol overnight so that it wasn't so thick and gooey in the morning. One of the key features in the Yak-52, which is its extensive pneumatic system, the engine starting, the landing gear and the flaps and wheel brakes are all pneumatically actuated.
There have been several versions of the Yak-52 produced, including a tail dragger variant. The Yak-50, from which the design of the 52 was derived, being a single-seater. So this was the first time a two-seat tail dragger model had been offered.
I believe this example came to the UK from Lithuania. Is that right? Have I got that right?
I think so. Quite a lot of them did. In case you're wondering about the rather unusual colour scheme, this aircraft certainly spent a lot of time living at Earl's Cone Airfield in Essex. That was the wartime home of the 353rd Fighter Group of the US Army Air Forces, and the colour scheme applied to this particular Yak is inspired by the 353rd Fighter Group's livery. Hence the black and yellow checkerboard elements.
I've heard it said that the fuel tank in each wing was deliberately made to be slightly smaller so that the aerobatic training students couldn't defect to the west.
Final pass coming up from the Yak-52, and with a wing rock to say goodbye. We'll see that pneumatically actuated undercarriage coming down. On the grass to land then, the Yak-52. Modern aircraft in our display today, although it might not necessarily look like it. flown for us by Alex Luton, who gave one of his first displays, might even have been his first, at our October show here last year. He's a British Airways Airbus captain operating out of Heathrow, now becoming increasingly involved on the display circuit. Well done, Alex. Now we're looking out for a unique formation in today's show. Two very impressive radial powered aircraft, the Catalina and the Staggerwing. As I mentioned, such a welcome sight, because while this Catalina, this consolidated PBY-5A Catalina, operated by Plain Sailing and based here at Duxford, is very familiar to all of us who've been coming here for a long time, you've got to be a real Duxford stalwart to remember seeing this beach D17S, the Staggerwing, here, because it did used to be quite a regular sight at Duxford displays. But in the early 1980s, when it was owned by the famed UK Warbird scene pioneer and historic racing driver Rob Vamplau, but it's now changed hands. It's owned by well-known Dutch display pilot Peter Kuipers, and it's, by my reckoning, the first time we've had this aircraft in the Duxford flying programme for about 40 years. And that's because while we've seen other Staggerwings here, most notably the one owned by the Feist Collection, which hopefully should fly again pretty soon, this one was put in non-flyable storage for many decades. Occasional appearances in public, this at various locations at which it was kept, but it was always maintained in absolutely outstanding condition. The aircraft came up for sale in 2020, and a very well-known Dutch display pilot and himself Staggerwing owner, Edwin Boshoff, thought this would be a good proposition. He purchased the aircraft and then let his good friend Peter Kuipers know about it. Peter was on the lookout for a suitable historic touring aeroplane.
So it was a real barn find.
Yes, it absolutely was, and it required not too much work to get it flying again. That was undertaken for Peter by Transal Aero Services at Midden-Zeeland in the Netherlands, who've become real type experts in recent years, also looking after Edwin Boshoff's aeroplane, amongst others. And it flew again for the first time in a very long while, towards the end of last year. But now, before we see the Staggerwing, here's the Catalina.
Catalina with its floats down. This Catalina was originally ordered for the Royal Canadian Air Force as a Canso A amphibian. It initially saw service with bomber reconnaissance squadrons along the British Columbia coast, and this was in the 1940s. And the Cansos were mainly operated from water despite their amphibious undercarriage, and were used on day and night patrols looking out for enemy submarines, particularly whilst Western Canada was under the threat of Japanese invasion. Floats now retracting again. And when the war was over, World War II, this aircraft went into storage for a while at Moose Jaw before it was converted to a freighter in 1948. And it flew photographic reconnaissance missions surveying the Arctic regions. It flew search and rescue and flood relief supply flights. It was initially struck off military charge in 1961 and was purchased for civilian work such as firefighting, pest control, general freight and fuel hauling, as well as photographical geophysical surveys.
One of the outstanding maritime aircraft of the Second World War, initially developed as a long-range pure flying boat, but later upgraded to PBY 5A form, A for amphibian, with this tricycle undercarriage. It's in so many theatres of the Second World War. If you've been to the American Air Museum here at Duxford, you will have walked in past a sculpture, a glass sculpture that's called Counting the Cost. It has on it silhouettes of all of the American-operated aircraft that were lost on operations from the UK during World War II, and there's a Catalina on it, specifically an OA-10A rescue Catalina of the 5th Emergency Rescue Squadron, stationed at Halesworth in Suffolk on air sea rescue duties in 1945, looking for downed Allied airmen. And that very OA-10A is the example depicted by Plain Sailing's Catalina, named Miss Pickup, because it was lost while looking for the downed pilot of a US Army Air Force's fighter on the 30th of March 1945, and was subsequently shot up by Luftwaffe aircraft, including Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters. Derek Head captaining the Catalina for us today, with David Barlow in the co-pilot seat. But now, once again, the Beech D-17S, popularly known as the Staggerwing.
To see, you should be able to see, certainly when it's on the ground, the reason why this aircraft is known as the Staggerwing, and that's because the lower wing is farther forward than the upper wing. And the Beech Model 17 Staggerwing first flew in 1932. At the height of the Great Depression, aircraft executive Walter H. Beech aircraft designer Ted Wells joined forces to collaborate on a project to produce a large, powerful and fast cabin biplane built specifically for the business executive.
It was incredibly successful as such in terms of its performance. The base model initially cost some $14,000 US. Compare that to the average cost of a house in the United States in 1933 when this aircraft came into service, which was around $6,000. You realised that this was not a cheap proposition, but it was also one that brought with it immense capability.
This particular aircraft started life in 1944 as a beach utility cargo traveller for the overseas market for transport and courier aircraft in World War II. And it was shipped to the United Kingdom under the Lend-Lease programme to enter the war effort. It remained in British service until 1946, when it returned to the USA and joined the US Navy.
Once it was struck off military charge, this aircraft spent some time with the US Civil Aeronautics Board, which is today's Federal Aviation Administration, then went through various private hands before Rob Lamplow acquired it in 1980, which is where we came in with this aircraft's story as far as its presence in the UK is concerned. Final pass coming up. Thing here is the colour scheme of this aeroplane. You'll get a better look at it as it taxis in. It's got the serial number PB1 on the fuselage, and that indicates that this machine depicts the personal aeroplane of His Royal Highness Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, as was allocated to him during his time in exile in London between 1941 and 45. The real Prince Bernhard Staggerwing was lost on the 1st of January 1945 in a Luftwaffe raid on the airfield at Evere near Brussels in Belgium as part of Operation Bodenplatte, the last-ditch German offensive as part of the Battle of the Bulge. Rob Lamplow, on acquiring this aircraft, decided to paint it up as Prince Bernhard's aeroplane, and the Prince himself saw it and flew in it at an air show at Hilversum that Lamplow took it to in 1980.
What engine has it got then?
The engine is the very familiar 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Wasp Junior. Those Staggerwings were fitted with a variety of different power plants over time, up to a one-off 710 horsepower Wright-engined air racing derivative. Peter Kuipers, best known for being one of the now training captains on B-17 Flying Fortress Sally B, a great polymath in terms of his display activity. He flies all sorts of aeroplanes and displays, bringing in the Beech D-17S, his first public display in his new acquisition.
Yes, and the aircraft is then operated by B-17 Limited, and it's been a real privilege to see Peter displaying it here today.
Yes, and we will certainly be seeing plenty more of it on the circuit now it's in Peter's ownership. And hopefully we should see some multiple Staggerwing combinations in future. I know Edwin Boshoff would very much like to fly his YC-43 Traveller model in combination with Peter. And then there's the Fighter Collections aeroplane. There are a couple of others in UK ownership as well, at least. As it taxis in, you can see the Dutch national marking of the war period, that orange triangle on the fuselage side. Our next two aircraft taxi out, you can see the family resemblance, even though they are in themselves very different machines. One, after all, a biplane fighter, the other a monoplane fighter. But just look at those fuselages as they pass along. There you can see the Hawker dynasty in action. Out on the grass, the Hawker Nimrod 1, one of two examples of the classic interwar fleet air arm fighter based here at Duxford. This one owned by the Fighter Collection, the other one, the Mark II, is with the Historic Aircraft Collection. And the other one is the Hurricane 12 from the Historic Aircraft Collection. In front of you, such a potent illustration of the progress of fighter design in just a few years during the 1930s. Notable that when RAF Duxford hosted the flypast element of the King's Jubilee Review of the Royal Air Force in July 1935, there wasn't a single monoplane aircraft to be seen in the entire event. The RAF's frontline strength, as depicted in that review, was all biplane. How quickly things changed. It was at this airfield in 1938 that the first Spitfires came into service with number 19 Squadron. That following on, just a few months after, the first Hurricanes entered RAF service. With its design team, led by the legendary Sidney Cam, made use of a great deal of the expertise it had gained through the range of biplane warplanes it produced during the 1930s. Not just the Nimrod and the Fury and the Demon and so forth on the fighter side, but also the likes of the Hart and Hind light bombers and the Audax Army Cooperation aircraft. When the time came to turn to monoplanes, and the ruggedness of the Hurricane airframe, as demonstrated on so many occasions during the Battle of Britain in particular, was testament to the expertise Hawker had built up. It stood this machine in very good stead in many different combat theatres until quite late in World War II. The Hurricane, such an outstanding performer in the Western Desert and in Southeast Asia, as well as in the European theatre. There was tremendous engine development to keep pace with the airframes, and we see that in these two aircraft as well. The Rolls-Royce Kestrel, a staple of Hawker's biplane fighter family, indeed not just fighters but the likes of the bombers and the Audax and so forth as well, superseded by the time the Hurricane came along with the Merlin. The latter, of course, famously developed using expertise Rolls-Royce had gained in producing the bespoke R series of engines for Britain's Schneider Trophy racers. here they are about to roll. The Hawker Nimrod 1, followed by the Hawker Hurricane 12.
The Hurricane and the Nimrod will just go off and join up and then be back to display for us in a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a security announcement. Would you please keep all your personal belongings with you at all times? If you see anything that appears to have been left unattended or in any way appears suspicious, please report this to a member of Duxford staff. Thank you for your cooperation.
Came about when the Fleet Air Arm needed a faster and more capable carrier-borne fighter to replace the outdated ferry flycatcher. Hawker came up with a design based on the land-based Fury, but in reality it was a very different machine with greater span wings. It had flotation boxes also in the wings and the fuselage, as befits an aeroplane for use in the maritime environment. Only 92 of them were produced, of which 42 were Mark 1s such as this. The Mark II, one of which, as I say, you can also see here in the ownership of the Historic Aircraft Collection, was a much more advanced machine. It had arrestor gear, it had sweepback on the wings, a different cooling system, a tail wheel as opposed to a skid, a gas start system, and a more powerful Kestrel engine, among other improvements. Just 3 Fleet Air Arm squadrons were equipped with Nimrods: 800 on HMS Courageous, 801 on Furious, and 802 aboard HMS Glorious. At that time, the Fleet Air Arm, which saw the first Nimrod into service in 1931, was organisationally part of the RAF. It wasn't transferred to the Admiralty for another 8 years. They were deployed quite widely aboard the aircraft carriers of the day, not least to the Eastern Mediterranean after Mussolini's Italy invaded Abyssinia. But thankfully, perhaps, given the advances in enemy fighter design of the period, they never saw frontline combat action. Mark 1, owned by the Fighter Collection, an incredibly fortunate survivor. It was just the 3rd production Mark 1 built at the Hawker plant at Kingston upon Thames. It was delivered to 408 Fleet Fighter Flight and embarked in HMS Glorious. It remained with them when the unit was renumbered as 802 Squadron. In 1938 it was written off. The remains ended up in a scrapyard in Hounslow and were donated to the RAF Museum. Then a company called Aero Vintage, headed up by Guy Black, bought them, and from 1994 onwards set about a restoration which culminated with a maiden flight in July 2000. And here comes our Hawker tribute. as the Nimrod 1 clears, along with the sound of its Kestrel engine. The Hurricane 12 takes centre stage with a very different note of the Merlin.
The Hurricane displaying for us today was actually rebuilt in the 1980s from original various Hurricane parts sourced from all over Canada. It's owned by the Historic Aircraft Collection now, based here at Duxford, who acquired it in 2002 and gave it an extensive programme of repairs and maintenance before it reappeared again. It's now painted in a colour scheme that represents a Hurricane flown by Czech pilot Josef František of 303 Polish Squadron, flying from Northolt during the Battle of Britain. And it's flown as part today of the Polish Heritage Flight.
Yes, both this Hurricane and the HAC's Mark V Spitfire, which is currently undergoing some routine maintenance prior to its season of displays getting underway, part of that Polish Heritage Flight initiative, recalling both the Polish manned squadrons within the RAF, not just the fighter squadrons, but the Bomber Command and Coastal Command squadrons likewise, and the multinational pilots that flew with those squadrons, such as the Czechoslovak Josef František. Indeed, number 303 Squadron, the most famous of the Polish squadrons within the RAF, it's a symbol of the international makeup of fighter command during the Battle of Britain. It was largely Polish manned, but initially it had RAF officers in senior positions, and it encompassed Czechoslovaks as well. František was a remarkable pilot. He was known as being something of a lone wolf who'd often go after enemy aircraft, having broken away from the rest of his compatriots on his squadron. His air fighting abilities were renowned, and it's interesting to speculate just how many aerial victories he might have achieved had he not lost his life on the 8th of October 1940 in a flying accident near Ewell in Surrey, possibly while performing low-level aerobatics. Already by then, in a short combat career, František had notched up some 17 confirmed aerial victories in less than a month.
And was he the highest scoring RAF foreign pilot during the Battle of Britain? Is that right?
I think he may well have been, yes. I don't have that to hand, but I believe so. It's very easy to see why the Polish Heritage Flight has decided to honour his aeroplane in particular. Brian Smith was flying the Nimrod for us, Dave Harvey the Hurricane. Look forward to seeing many more Hurricanes and indeed Spitfires at our Battle of Britain air show in September. Tickets are already on sale, as they are for our summer air show, Saturday the 18th, Sunday the 19th of June, and for the whole programme of flying days taking place here throughout the summer, the next of which is on the 5th of June, commemorating D-Day. One more item still remains on our programme today, and it's a classic dogfight duo. The Spanish-built Rolls-Royce Merlin-engined Hispano Buchon, representing the German-built Daimler-Benz-powered Messerschmitt Bf 109, and a combat veteran Supermarine Spitfire Mark V. Spitfire 5B from the fighter collection, an airframe with 7 confirmed aerial victories to its credit, built by the famous Vickers Armstrong's Shadow factory at Castle Bromwich in Birmingham, and taken on charge by the RAF in May 1942, following test flying by no less an individual than the great Alex Henshaw. The aircraft spent time with several squadrons: Latley, number 402 City of Winnipeg Squadron, a Royal Canadian Air Force unit, and the aircraft appears in those colours today. With it, one of the many Hispano-Buchons that first came to Duxford as far back as 1968 for the making of the film Battle of Britain. They've since become amongst the most legendary representatives on the Warbird circuit today. Aircraft that have reappeared in recent years in ever larger numbers thanks to the cache of Buchons that was provided to Texan businessman and aviator Connie Edwards as part payment for his services in flying for the film, re-emerging into the hands of different owners over the last decade. And one of these new restorations is the aircraft that we're going to see from Anglia Aircraft Restorations, which is in the colours of a Luftwaffe Bf 109, flown on the Eastern Front by Jagdgeschwader 52. And here they come from the left, the Spitfire and the Buchon.
a lovely solo display there from the fighter collections Spitfire, flown for us today by Pete Pinsey.
Yes, their chief pilot and someone who's so well versed in flying all manner of historic aeroplanes. It's always so nice to see him singled out for a solo slot in a Warbird like that.
Yes, and of course earlier on he flew his Cosmic Wind.
Yes, absolutely, such is the versatility. And here comes the Buchon from Anglia Aircraft Restorations. Which inevitably came off worst in that little tangle between the RAF and the Luftwaffe. Another of those fighters synonymous with Duxford, both as wartime enemy and as film star in 1968. And of course a very appropriate way with the two classic wartime combatants to bring to an end are commemorating VE Day, Flying Day today. Siobhan, it's been an absolutely lovely day out in the sunshine, rather better weather than we expected.
I agree, indeed it has. And I hope everybody here today has enjoyed themselves. And we hope to see you again at another Flying Day or event here at IWM Duxford in the near future.
And of course, worth showing a bit of appreciation, I think, not just to the pilots who've flown for you, but also everyone else involved in the putting on of this opening event of the season, not least the unsung heroes, the ground crew and the technicians, without whom nothing would have been able to fly for you today. So thank you very much to all of them, and thank you to you for coming along for our opening Flying Day of 2022. Keep an eye out on the website, iwm.org.uk, for details of the upcoming flying days. Next of them, as I say, apart from the model flying day tomorrow, in full-size aircraft terms, commemorating D-Day on the 5th of June. The following Saturday, the 11th of June, that's the day for IWM Live, our new history festival here at Duxford, with a variety of talks from leading historians and other attractions around the site. And the following weekend, Saturday 18th, Sunday 19th of June, the dates for our summer air show. That's just a flavour of what's coming up here at Duxford over the months to come. You can book tickets, of course, online for all of them. Siobhan, lovely to share today with you once again.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much, Ben. And remember, everybody, there's plenty to do around the site here today. Lots of different activities for all the family. The airliners talk to DAS about the airline collection. And of course, all of the museum's collection in the hangars.
And of course, when you do get on your way, do have a safe journey home. Enjoy what remains of the weekend. But for now, from Siobhan Collis and from me, Ben Donnell, thank you for your attention today, and goodbye for now.
Hey folks, don't go anywhere. I'll have a bit of an update for you. Just let the Buchon touch in. That's a bit better. Hello. Didn't get to say a proper welcome this morning, so I'll do it now. Thank you very much for joining us today. Didn't get to do my welcome, but we did do what we'd hoped, which was bring you Duxford's first flying day of the year live. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've got audio monitoring all over the place here. I did have a few clips lined up, and I'll share some of them with you in a moment. They're from previous Duxford air shows. I'd like to bring a few of those along in case we get poor weather moments and we can play a little bit while that happens, but we didn't get that today, did we? A smashing days flying. Thank you for joining the chat. I saw a couple of queries that I wanted to respond to. I see what, I'm going to play a video while I find those. We saw the Nimrod today on its own and with the Hurricane as well. We did one better back in, it's 10 years ago, so this is from the Planes TV archive, all available on watch.planestv.com. This is, I think it's Nimrod Fury Hurricane, the Eagle Eyes. Oh, what a shame. My laptop's just died, I'm not going to be able to show you it. Okay, well, at least we're able to give a little cheerio to you at the very least on the end of today's stream. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have and you'd like to support Planes TV and what we do, head over to watch.planestv.com. It's the very best way to support the service. Sign up there, as the subscription says, gives you access to, amongst very many things, our archive stretches back 30 years, but amongst that are included the 4 live broadcasts we did from Duxford last year at the July Air Show and the September Air Show. Lots of air tattoos, Royal International Air Tattoos over the years. The Flying Legend Show from 2019, all available to watch on demand at your leisure. I'm changing a couple of things with that this year, which will make it a little easier to watch on TV. But there's but try it out. There's a free month available to new subscribers. You head to watch.planestv. I can't even do my title now. At least we made it to the end. I'm running a new set of equipment here, which allows me to do a bit of a one-man show without dragging a big outside broadcast trailer around with me. So, and forgive us if the camera works a little rusty and the back focus was out on the main camera, which was being recorded by Adam today. A big thank you to him for giving up his time and helping me film what's been a lovely day's flying. So forgive us for a little rusty. Dusting off the cobwebs for our first show of the year, but hopefully an entertaining day. The chat, I never managed to take a look at what was there. Mention of Boris Johnson, we'll skirt past that. Oh, Andy mentioning my trophy, which we won't talk about, but thank you, Andy. And Angus going to Riyadh. So, yeah, the on-demand service, you'll be able to watch Riyadh on that this year. Likewise, the Duxford June show and the September show. Few more too. They're all pay to view. Got to make a living here, guys, but we will be doing lots of free stuff here on YouTube as well, so make sure to subscribe. And of course, the very best way of keeping in contact with what we're doing is via the email newsletter. I mean, follow us wherever you like. Do like this video and of course subscribe on YouTube. But I do like to send an email out once a week, and it's from me. You can reply to it. We can have a bit of a chat. There's a link to the There's a link in the description on how to sign up for that if you haven't already. Chris asking if I ever spoke to Shuttleworth. I've sent messages last year, but I haven't done this year. I should do, shouldn't I? Because I would love to do a bit of work at Shuttleworth. I spent my youth sat on the van watching Shuttleworth shows in the past, and very happy days they were too. So we'll turn this down. Tyrone saying, very nice, thank you, great. Joshua, lovely to see you in there, Joshua. Massive congratulations. Yeah, okay, award, lovely. Thank you. Will you be live streaming Eastbourne? Don't know, haven't talked to Peter yet this year. Eastbourne need your support, by the way. Get down to the share show. Tricky financials for council-run shows at the moment, so I'd like to do Eastbourne, but it's always tricky financially. It's very different from an airfield-based show where the aircraft can be quite distant and you lose the intimacy with the aircraft. Wrong term. You know, there's a bit more of a flow when we're at an airfield and we've got the guys crewing in and taxiing out and all the rest of it. So I'd still like to do it. I really do enjoy Eastbourne shows, so maybe. VR Flight Sim guy says amazing camera work. I'll pass that on to Adam. You're being generous. We are a little rusty, so we will improve as the year goes on, I'm sure. And Jackie saying thank you for the awesome stream. Will you be live streaming Eastbourne? Hello. I'm just live, but thank you. You can watch yourself back later. what else was there? Purple Bat saying great stream, great footage, says Lee, thank you very much. Hoping the next one goes smoothly. Yes, thank you, Oliver, lovely to see you tuning in as ever, thank you. Great to see Bad Santa tuning in from the USA, thank you. And Ryan saying, pleased to see the weather is good. Yes, me too. TKW saying, is this live? It is, but not for much longer. We're about to finish, but do wind back and watch some of the fantastic flying we've had. Yeah, it's not an ideal setup at Flying Days where we don't have a proper PA, public address system, so we can't get the commentators feeding quite the way I'd like to, but hopefully you could hear what was going on. Ben and Siobhan doing a grand job of keeping you informed. And Chris, thank you so much for, for the £2 donation as much as anything else, but for supporting us by monitoring the chat. And yes, she says like and subscribe. And remember to give it a thumbs up. Yeah, wish my laptop hadn't just died. I had a few clips lined up, but you'll have to go and find your own entertainment from the on-demand service. As I say, a free month is available at watch.planestv.com. That catalogue stretches back 30 years, but some really nice stuff from the Duxford May 2012 air show. I picked out a few of those to play for you, which I'm not able to do, sadly. Nimrod, Fury, Hurricane all together, and it was Jubilee year, of course. So Tucano in a nice scheme, Hawk displaying. I think it's the Belgian F-16 in there too. Really action-packed show. Love to see some. We haven't had any jets yet, have we? We need a bit of fast jet action. Right. Well, if nobody's got any more questions for me in the chat, Daz, will you be producing React DVDs this year? Sadly, DVDs do not sell as well as they used to, Daz. So our focus will be, unless something remarkable happens, our focus will be entirely on our on-demand service. That's at watch.planestv.com and on YouTube as well. And my intention is to bring you free-to-view arrivals, departures, and then the weekend show and the Friday show itself will be available to view on the on-demand service, watch.planestv.com. £10. Not too bad, not too shabby. And I haven't refined what we'll do then in terms of a souvenir program as we would have done in the past. I'd like to do that. It depends on, frankly, how many of you sign up to watch React and give me a signal that you'd like to then watch a souvenir program, which I would love to produce. The on-demand service gives a lot more flexibility in what we do produce. We can do 4 sequences, for example, 4 sequences of a display with a minicam and maybe pilot commentary as well. That's something that I'd like to do a lot of, so that's something we'll be aiming for. And then, yeah, it would be a great shame not to produce some form of souvenir program that brings together all the very best bits from the 3 days and indeed arrivals, departures. So it's likely we'll do that, but I can show you the graph if you like of DVD and Blu-ray sales are gradually dropping off, and it gets to a point where it's very difficult to justify the extra time and expense of producing those physical products. It's a long story. Oh dear, my old man's in the chat asking Daz why you buy a DVD. I still buy DVDs and Blu-rays. Yes, part of it is that I haven't had a DVD and Blu-ray player in my house for 10 years yet. That's how I've been making my living. I've watched a few of them by whatever means I can, of course. And energy, don't know what that means. My energy? Too low, perhaps? I was out filming gliders yesterday. Maybe the outside air has got to me. Malcolm asking, will we cover Jersey? Yes, we will. Mike's very keen to have us back. I'm keen to be there. We'll find a way of doing it. Wonderful show, wonderful ambience of the island, and very hospitable organisers as well. Hospitable organisers. It's a nice thing to say about a client, but yeah, really lovely show to cover, and they always bring something different to that show that we just don't see in the UK, and indeed at other continental shows. I'd like to do more on the continent. It's not quite so easy as it used to be, if I can put it like that. And I won't go into more detail because that'll open a whole can of worms. 64 members on, oh yes, your Discord server, Oliver. Good on you. It's 64 on there. And will you come to La Ferté in June? No, unlikely. For some of the reasons I'm not giving at the moment about the complexities of taking this abroad now. And hey, if someone's happy to pay me to do it, I'll do it. Ian Watson saying, Yeah, pay-per-view, more sustainable option for folk that live a significant distance away from air shows in the UK and beyond. Good to hear. You know, it has been successful in a period where we haven't been doing many shows. It's grown nicely. It's not yet at a point where I feel terribly comfortable, but it will be very soon. So yeah, do sign up. Check it out. watch.planestv.com. Stop going on about it now. And lovely. And Chris saying you can donate. Yeah. Hey, there's 600 of you still watching, but I've got to get back to Devon. Adam needs a lift home too. Cosford is looking good this year. I hate to be filming, but not live streaming this year, sadly. I'd like to have found a way of doing it. And what about Bob saying don't need internet with a DVD? Yes, that is accurate. Clacton Air Show. Great venue to go for, first time for you. We've done Clacton just the once. Didn't, it was for DVD and didn't do terribly well financially. When is Clacton? I'm not sure. Whoa! I missed the duck race in the village today, but apparently we won £100. Hooray! That's more than I've managed on the super chats today. Hint, hint. That's good stuff. Great stream, thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a lovely day, wasn't it? Weather helps. Right, I am going to say cheerio. I'm sure that chat will go on all evening if I keep the back and forth going. One last look, because I do enjoy this. It's so nice to be able to communicate with you guys watching. You certainly don't get that with DVDs, which is part of the appeal, I'll be honest. And the fact that I'll walk off site here today, I won't have to edit anything. Graham saying you really enjoyed it. Lovely. Cheers, Gemma. See you next time. That might have been Gemma behind me there. We'll see you next time. Sorry, Gemma, talking to people watching. Bournemouth. Oh yeah, the cockpit footage from Typhoon Landing. How funny. How funny you mentioned that. I love that too. Skirting the clouds in the early evening as the sun was setting. And Lorenzo saying, brilliant quality streaming on my 55-inch TV. Show off. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear that it looked good. Susie saying, top job. Lovely. Hey, it's really good to see so many of you tuning in. And we'll be back here at Duxford for future flying days. As I said already, please sign up for the email newsletter. It's just little old me, I'm not going to spam you. It's once a week, maybe twice a week if we get busy in the summer. I send an email newsletter out, just updating you on where we are and what we're doing and what we have available for you to view. Maybe with the odd special offer of access to on-demand services, etc. And the one that's running at the moment is a free month. Head to watch.planestv.com and you can sign up for a free whole month of watching aeroplanes flying backwards and forwards. It is good stuff. Check out the stuff from the archive, section that stretches back to the early 90s. You can watch some of the what we'd certainly think of as classic jets now, but the RAF, Buccaneer, Phantoms, Tornadoes, Harriers, all of that good stuff. And some really nice flying here at Duxford. Right, we will pack away now. I'm going to hit the big fade to black button. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again very soon at an air show. Cheers.